Hey, this is Professor Brian Domino, and we're here today to talk about Immanuel Kant. I'm going to deviate from my normal procedure this time, and I'm not going to give you an overview of Kant. I'm not doing that because you're probably tired of me talking to you, and because I found another video by someone else that does a great job of explaining Kant's ethical theory. What I want to do now is to talk about a very serious problem, and that is bad Kant videos. The reason I'm talking about this is Kant is difficult, and there's no way to make difficult easy. You can just make difficult less difficult. And the problem is that you're probably still going to find the video that I've selected to be difficult, and you may look for another video. And the problem there is, since you don't know anything about Kant, you're going to pick a video for reasons other than the quality of what the person says about Kant. So, I'm going to show you some very common mistakes that people make when they make a video about Kant to help you at least pick a better video. If you really want to look for another one, I recommend you don't. Let me make it clear, I'm not picking on these people in particular. I don't even know them. I just found these videos. These are examples of incredibly common mistakes. So, without further ado, let's go to the first video. Here's a video where someone explains why Kant is important, and I'll let him continue.
Kant's work is so important to moral philosophy because, first of all, it focuses on doing the right thing.
Did you catch that? So Kant's work in moral philosophy is so important because it focuses on doing the right thing. That is to say, Kant's work about doing the right thing is important because it focuses on doing the right thing. So at least this guy's not wrong. We're off to an awesome start. Let's see who's next. Okay, so I need to confess a personal weakness. I love these Sharpie kind of videos when they're right. So here, as you'll see, is Kant's categorical imperative. Let's not worry about too much what that is right now. But basically, this is Kant's rule for acting ethically. And this particular formulation, there's a total of three. This one is called the universalization, easy for me to say, formulation. And here they have an explanation, because act as if the maximum of your action were to become a universal law of nature. Isn't that clear? But look at this. Behave in such a way that you think it would be right for everyone to behave. This means essentially that you don't need an ethical theory at all, right? You already know what the right thing to do is. What is Kant adding here? Nothing. This is a horrible, horrible misunderstanding, right? Because think about this just for a minute. If you're a serial killer, would you have a problem if everyone else were a serial killer? Well, as long as they don't kill you, probably not. Right? So just because you believe it would be right for everyone to behave in a certain way doesn't mean it is right. This is a very gross misunderstanding of Kant, and it hurts me deeply that a video using Sharpie markers made such a mistake. Unfortunately, it gets worse. Let's see what they say next. So, this is the third formulation of the categorical imperative. They've skipped the second one. That's okay. You'll see in the course pack that I sort of skipped this first one. And it's not 100% clear either, right? Act in such a way that you treat humanity, whether in your own person or in the person of any other, never simply. And unfortunately, they chose to translate Kant's word here as simply. I think only or merely might have captured his meaning a little better. But anyway, that's what it means. Never simply as a means, but always at the same time as an end. Let's see how they explain this. Okay, so First of all, Kant does not say that everyone is due respect because they are people. Everyone is due respect because they are instantiations of rationality. Okay? And in fact, the part about Kant that most people don't like to talk about is that if you can't be rational, he doesn't think you deserve respect. This is wrong. It's true that as far as we know, no other living thing deserves the same respect. Kant was a little bit more open-minded than this. He was open to the possibility that there could be life on other planets that is also rational and so is also deserving of respect. But here's the problem. You should never disrespect people, that's fine. Undervalue people, I'm not sure I know what that means. Or use people for your own ends. Well, that's not right because that ignores this word simply or only. Right now, you are using me as a means to your own ends, right? You're taking this class probably because it fulfills a requirement, so you are using me. And if we want to be cynical, I'm using you too, right? You're a means to my employment. Kant understands that. The problem is not that we're using each other, it's that that's not all we're doing, right? We're still treating each other with respect. Kant understands that you have to use other people in your daily life. Otherwise, you couldn't get anything done. Okay, so that's something these people don't understand. This is a very common mistake. I'm very disappointed in this Sharpie video. So anyway, really you should just watch the video I chose. Okay, let's see how someone else handles this issue of universalizability. Let's let him talk.
And again, for this to be a moral code, we want there to be universalizability. The principle to be rational and moral, it must be universalizable. It must apply to everyone, and it must apply in every case that is relevantly similar to this.
So far, so good, right? This is Kant's idea that you shouldn't think of ethics as just applying to you, that somehow you're special and there's different rules for you. I mean, I think I would say this is true for every moral philosopher, but Kant's the one who actually talks about universalizability, so not bad.
The situation you're considering. So to take this to the next step, if an action can be universalized, then we can accept the maxim, we can accept the rule associated with it.
Okay, so here's the problem. Just because an action can be universalized does not mean, according to Kant, that the action is moral. We'll see later on what Kant actually means, but let's just think about an example. Suppose you're wondering, do I have an ethical obligation to be a vegan? That is, someone who doesn't eat any animal products of any kind. Well, can you universalize this? That is, can you say nobody should eat or consume animal products of any kind? Well, sure, right? You can imagine a world in which no one consumes animal products of any kind. Oh, so it looks like it's moral. Let's try the opposite, though. Can you imagine a world in which people do consume animal products? Yeah, right. That's the world we're currently in. So we're stuck. Is it moral or is it immoral? We don't know. This makes Kant totally useless. I'm not quite sure what you couldn't universalize. Some pretty absurd things like that I'm going to take over 50% of the food in the world, right? You can't universalize that because there's not that many 50%, right? After two people did it, that would be all the food in the world. But that's not going to happen, right? That's not a realistic scenario. Also, I'm not really sure what this person means by accept the maxim. That seems to be the same problem the previous video had, that what we should be doing is just following the inner voice that tells us what's right or wrong, and so Kant is really adding almost nothing. Okay, here's a video made by a student in a philosophy class. I mean, I have to say I do feel bad picking on a student, and I don't actually mean to be picking on this particular person. This is, as you can see up here, the title is Kant's Ethics Applied to the Lord of War. And over here we have, according to Kant, an actor's motive or intention is the key factor for determining an action's should use an apostrophe, they're cheap, moral status. Well, that's not exactly right. It is true that for Kant, why you do something, so what your intentions are, is very important, but it doesn't determine the action's moral status in the sense of right or wrong, as you see he seems to imply down here. What it does determine is whether you're doing something that's moral at all. And the contrast here is not between moral and immoral, but moral and amoral. Okay, so for Kant, the only acceptable intention for doing something, if you want to claim that it's a moral action, is doing it out of a sense of duty. If you do something for some other reason, it's not that it's right or wrong, it's just that it's no longer a moral action. Again, not in the sense of being immoral, but in the sense of being amoral. So let's just make this very clear. Let's say you see someone drop a bunch of things that they're carrying. If you help this person because you think they're cute, Kant is saying, look, this is no longer a right or wrong action. This is flirting. Okay, he's not saying it's right, he's not saying it's wrong, he's just saying, look, this is not a moral action. Again, not in the sense that it's morally wrong to flirt, but that this is not something that someone should be praised or blamed for. Okay, if the reason you help the person is because you think you have a sense of, you think you have a duty to help people, then you've got the right intention. And then maybe what you've done is actually morally correct. Okay, I really wanted to love this video. I love this avatar for the narrator. It's nice that she begins explaining where and when Kant lived. I can excuse this. I should be Kantian deontology, right? Kantianism is a noun, and so is that. And so in English, you should have adjective and then a noun. But hey, that's trivial. Let's see what goes on in this video. So that's pretty awesome, right? That's a lot of footsteps to get almost nowhere. But yeah, I couldn't resist. Sorry.
So, Kant, Google says that you think that the moral worth of an action is determined entirely by whether it's motivated by duty. Is that true?
Yes, people ought to act from duty.
In class, we learned that you value intention more than the outcome. So let's say Sam wanted to save the child so he could become a YouTube star. Would his action still be considered morally good?
So act that you may use humanity, whether in your own or in the person of any other, always at the same time as an end, never merely a means.
If I may ask, what is your definition of duty?
So, doesn't really answer the question. So, just to be clear, if you save a child just so you can become a YouTube star, you are using the child as a means to an end, and thus that is immoral according to Kant. So, but otherwise, no problem so far.
The necessity to act out of respect for moral law.
Okay, so
So that was a very complicated way of saying you should do something because you think it's the right thing to do, period.
apply it to our example. If it is Sam's duty to try to save the child, but he fails, his action is still considered morally good. So Kant.
So, unfortunately, she doesn't explain the reason that Kant thinks it's okay if you have a moral obligation to do something and you fail at it is because he realizes you're not in charge of the world. What you are in charge of is your intentions. Okay, so you may try to save someone, and despite your best efforts, they still die. Kant appreciates that that's not your fault.
Besides acting from duty, how can we satisfy the categorical imperative?
Act only in accordance with that maxim through which you can at the same time will that it become a universal law.
So, the next time you think it's okay to lie, ask yourself, what if everyone also start lying? Do you want to live in a world that has lying as a universal law?
No, 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 no. Things were going so well, and then she blew it. But she blew it in a way that lots and lots of people blow it as well. The idea of Kant's philosophy is not would I want to live in that world where everyone acted that way, because that just amounts to I have this little voice inside of my head that's going to tell me what the right thing to do is. What Kant is saying is that actually that that maxim, right, that proposed kind of duty is self-refuting. It's logically incoherent. You can't say that everyone should be allowed to lie, because the only reason lies work is because all of us generally expect other people to tell the truth. If we knew everyone was lying all the time, we would no longer have that expectation, and thus lying would be impossible. So do you see that there's a contradiction there, right? You're willing that you be able to lie, but a result of that will is that you are not able to lie, because the whole concept of truth telling has been destroyed. So it's a logical problem. It's not a gee, would I want to live in that kind of world? We'll see more of that later. This is the end of my rant mode. I'm going to leave you with this happy video. So enjoy the video I've assigned to you. Please don't go looking for other videos. I hope I've convinced you that there's a lot of erroneous material out on the internet, and if you just go to YouTube and type in Kant's ethics, you're going to get a lot of bad videos. Thanks and good luck.